Okay, today we're going to go over installing this bilge pump and float switch to your 12-volt battery source. Also, if your boat has a 3-wire power supply in your bilge, we're going to go over how to wire your bilge pump and float switch to a 3-wire setup as well. Stay tuned. Okay, for starters, we're going to look at the back of the bilge pump. And we're going to take note of the fuse rating. It says 10 amp fuse for this 12-volt pump. So what I have here is a 10 amp fuse on my battery. So we're going to use that as our circuit protection today. So make sure you take note of your proper circuit protection rating for your pump. We're going to start with the float switch, which has 2 gray wires. You can select either one and take that wire, and we're going to connect it directly to our 12-volt positive. We're then going to take the other wire coming from the float switch, and we're going to connect it directly to the bilge pump itself. So we're going to do that real quick. Now keep in mind, I'm not using heat shrink. This is just for demonstration purposes. So when you're installing this on a boat, you're going to want to use heat shrink and a heat gun to make these connections watertight. So now I have my float switch connected directly to the battery and then also connected directly to the pump. Last, we're going to take the pump and we're going to connect the ground to the battery. So now I have 12 volts going into the switch. When it lifts up, it's going to go pass through the switch and back into the pump like so. This is the basic setup for automatic function of the float switch. And now we're going to move over how to install this same setup with a 3-wire power supply. Okay, in this section we're going to go over how to wire this pump and float switch in a bilge that has 3 wires going to it. Now the reason why there's 3 wires in your bilge is because you have on your dash a manual override switch. And what this switch does is provide an additional leg of power to the pump to turn it on demand. Otherwise, the pump is solely going to operate via the float switch. So the first thing we want to do is identify which wires are coming from our switch and which wire is a direct connection to the battery. The first thing we're going to do is get our multimeter, set it to volts DC, and check for our constant power. 12.6, and we have nothing on this one. So this looks like our constant power. Now, in order to double check this other leg, we're gonna switch on the dash on and off to verify that is the power coming from the switch on the dash. So having our wires identified is going to be half the battle. Once we know which wires are which, we're going to be able to wire this pump with confidence without any kind of guesswork. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is the easiest hookup, and that's going to be our ground wire from the pump. So let's get this one out of the way, and we'll start by process of elimination going through the rest of the wires. So now we have our pump coming from our ground wire coming from our pump to the ground wire in the bilge. Then we're going to take one wire from our float, any wire will do, and we're going to attach that one directly to the constant power coming from the battery. Just like in our other demonstration, that one side of the float goes directly to the hot. And now we have the wires that are left are the positive wire going to the pump and one other wire from the float switch. And we're going to take both of these together. We're going to put them together. And we're going to wire that on the switched side of our block. So to recap, we have the ground going to the pump. We have one wire from our float directly to our hot, and then we have the other wire from our float switch combined with our pump going to the switch side. And what that's going to do is turn the pump on with the switch, as well as the pump turning on with the float switch. Now what's happening here is that you have a constant power supply going directly to the float and then going back out of the float into the pump. That's how it functions in auto. And then you have also power available coming from the switch, and you could also see that the switch has a white wire. That's also the same wire going to the block there. And that's also going to supply power on demand when you want to turn it on without waiting for the water to come up to a certain level. It's very easy. Once you have all the wires identified, it's not always easy to make these connections in a bilge. Sometimes you have hard to reach places and you don't always have easy access, but I do recommend making these connections with heat shrink wire terminals and a terminal strip if you can fit that in there, because that way if you have to replace a float switch or you have to replace the bilge pump, you can simply unscrew it, pop a new pump in, crimp on new ring terminals, and screw it back in without having to cut any butt connections, butt splices, or anything like that. So this is it. If you have any other questions, leave any questions in the comment. And again, like, subscribe for more videos. Again, snyacht.com for all your boating needs. See you on the next one.